Hey there, Rick Sage, recording at the Rimrock Studios in Bishop, California. Welcome to Season 2 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where I speak with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz and share their stories, tips, advice, productivity tricks, and ideas you can use to take your career or business to the next level. Hey guys, I've got some exciting news. I recently joined Patreon. In case you're wondering, Patreon is a simple way for you to contribute to my podcast every month and get super cool rewards in return. I think you'll enjoy the perks. Go to patreon.com/theoutdoorbiz/patron and become a patron today. Thank you. Hello. This episode is with outdoor photographer Rachid Dahnoun. Rachid tells us about how he turned a love for painting into a prolific outdoor photo career and some of the cool places he gets to shoot. Welcome to the show, Rachid. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to chat with you. We haven't spoken in a while. You've been busy. I've been busy. We kind of went off on different paths. Sounds like you've been up to some good stuff.
I have. It's been a kind of a whirlwind of a year, but I'm excited for 2018. And man, there's been a lot going on.
Right on.
All good things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I didn't realize you had a degree in photography from the Maryland Institute of Art. Did you grow up in Maryland?
I did not grow up in Maryland, but I grew up in South Carolina.
Okay.
And I lived there till I was 15. I actually went to finish my high school up in the Mount Shasta area, up at a boarding school.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, I got accepted into. I was really big into painting and drawing in high school, so I got accepted with that portfolio into MICA, Maryland Institute College of Art.
Nice.
And then from there is where I actually had my first experience in the darkroom and picked up photography full time.
Gotcha. So was the boarding school, is that how you got to California?
That was, yes. I did not have the best behavioral track record as a young man.
Well, you know what? All of us guys, we've all been through something back in our day. I won't tell you all the stuff I did.
So, in a lot of ways, it was a blessing in disguise, I'd say, because, that was where I first came out to California. It was my first time living in the mountains. And then ultimately, I took my first backpacking trip.
Right.
And so there was some silver linings there for sure.
Yeah, that's a nice place to land, Mount Shasta. Man, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, Northern California. It's and I still live in Northern California.
There you go. Right.
So I suppose it sucks.
Yeah. So that's where you got exposed to the outdoors? You got into backpacking and hiking and stuff there?
Yeah, that was. I've always been outdoors. I grew up skateboarding my whole life. In South Carolina, being outside on Hilton Head Island specifically.
Oh, okay.
I was always, on the beach at the ocean. Like I've always loved being outdoors. But then once I was in Northern California, up in the Shasta area, that was when I really had my first experience hiking in the mountains, and ultimately took my first backpacking trip.
And what was that like? Where'd you go?
It was a 2-week trip in the Trinity Alps.
Wow, that's some rugged country up there.
Oh man, and for folks who don't know about the Trinities, it's a small little range up there, but it is stunning.
Yeah, beautiful. But a lot of up and down. Yeah,
a lot of up and down.
Yeah. Awesome. So 2 weeks. Did you obviously have backpacked, camped out? Did you fish and all that kind of stuff, or you just hiked and?
Did the whole thing. Yeah, it was. We were. Well, how old were we? We were 15, 16-year-olds. So it wasn't. We weren't putting in aggressive mileage.
Right.
It was. Half day. Hike, get to a lake, enjoy, fish, swim. Actually, just wasn't some of the sufferfest that I get myself into now. Right.
So you first picked up a camera back in Maryland. Was that because you had to take photography for your degree, or did you gravitate to that some other way?
I had the option of taking an elective class, or I had to take an elective class when I was in MICA. So I was fully invested in painting. I was a painting major.
Okay.
And it was my sophomore year. I just decided, I'd be really interested. I've never worked. This was at the very end of the film days.
Uh-huh.
So this was to give you perspective, right when I graduated was 2002, and that's when some of the first DSLRs started coming out.
Right.
So I was really intrigued to work in the darkroom at the time. I thought that was really interesting. So I took one class, just a black and white photoelectric class, and man, I was absolutely hooked. I changed everything, whole trajectory.
Wow. Do you paint at all today, or gave it all up? No painting.
I don't. I wish I had time.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Right.
In my later years, that's a goal on the whiteboard. But I feel like I do translate a lot of that, the way I approach my photography in painting. I get a lot of, it's interesting to read critiques and things and reviews over the years of my work, and a lot of people liken some of it to painting, and that's probably why.
Right. And so back to Shasta, you got involved in backpacking. That kind of cemented your love for the outdoors. After you left Shasta and after you graduated, what was your first? Did you go to work as a photographer right away, or what'd you do before you became?
No, I did not. I was in Baltimore, and on the East Coast, and I was really tired of city life. I had some opportunities up in New York City. I had been working as an intern up there in the city for about a year prior, but man, I just couldn't deal. I had to. I was really missing just open spaces, and I was working a lot on the East Coast, but I really had an itch to get out west. So I had a great friend of mine, Nate Bales, who was living in Lake Tahoe, and I caught wind of the fact that he had an extra room available. So I put everything in my truck and I drove straight out west.
Nice.
And did a winter with him. And in my head, I thought, well, I'll do this winter, and then I'll come up with next steps after that. Potentially, then use my degree, jump into photography full time, and that just never developed. I fell in love with Tahoe. I was working at Kirkwood bartending,
nice,
and just fell in love with the Sierras in general, and just didn't want to leave. So I stayed the next summer, and then on we go for the next 15 years.
Wow.
I've been in Tahoe, and I didn't pick up a camera. Probably for maybe the first 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Really?
Yeah. I took a heavy break. All I did was snowboard, climb, mountain bike, hike, backpack. And that ultimately led me to bringing my camera on a lot of those trips.
Gotcha. Right.
But I was really disenchanted when I left the East Coast with how I had no idea how to make money doing what I was doing. There just wasn't a lot of focus on that at school, which I think can be a big problem with art schools, because it's all about creation, but you also need to learn how to create money.
Right, exactly. They don't teach you that very well. They don't even talk about it in some programs.
No, and I think it can be a big disservice to folks. And I never had to take one business class or anything, and it wasn't even offered at the time.
So how did you learn all that? How did you figure all that out? Because you're well connected. You've had a great, 20-year or more career as an outdoor photographer, commercial.
Yeah, it was a big crash course for me, and I see a lot of successes, a lot of failures, probably more failures than successes, and I have a really good network of folks that I've learned a lot from, and that's both in the photography space and the outdoor space. And in my wife is a marketing professional.
Oh, perfect.
She is definitely behind the scenes helping me quite a bit.
That's great. That's good to have.
Yeah. Well, exactly. She's been instrumental in helping me with a lot of business aspects over the years. So, help from all angles.
Right. And so what was your first, commercial, or what was your first, work in the photography space? Did you just go as a second shooter? How'd that come about?
I never really assisted for anybody.
Wow.
That was just not a route that I was really ever interested in taking. So I did it the hard way. I bartended and saved my cash and and started doing little jobs, and ultimately just transitioned into being a full-time pro that way.
Okay.
I never really shadowed anybody.
And who were some of the first groups you shot for? Was it local ski areas, Kirkwood, or?
Yep, Kirkwood.
Okay, yeah, got
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I went, and it was actually through the bartending connection there. The CEO, Tim Cohey, would sit at my bar quite a bit, and he caught wind over the fact over the years of the fact that I was a photographer, and asked me if I wanted to go up with the TV crew, like the following morning.
Nice.
With outside TV. And I said, yeah, no, I actually love that. He said, we're really short on assets and there's no big pressure, but let's see what you can do. And it was a big pow day.
Oh, nice.
The next day. And I was like, oh, absolutely. Because I get to go up before the public,
right.
the patrol, the athletes. I was like, well, that sounds awesome.
How bad can that be? It'd be a good day of skiing, if nothing else.
Exactly. So went up with those guys and came back with actually a really nice set of images, some of which are still used today.
Oh, cool.
And that was really what catapulted me into the commercial outdoor space. That was my first time shooting for a corporation, being published and getting paid. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, it's snowball. Yeah, you work with a lot of great outdoor brands, and you're branching out. We just talked about off air about some Time Inc. stuff you're working. I see people like Microsoft and ARP on your website. How did that all come about? You broadened your reach. Well, possibly, now that I say that, as the outdoor space becomes more and more, mainstream, these guys are all probably looking for outdoor images, and your images are great. Did they find you, or did you find them? How'd that come about?
No, you hit the nail on the head there. That's the short answer. Is the outdoor space is definitely bridged into so many industries. It just because of the type of content that they want to have selling their brands. Right. So it's not just necessarily people think, oh, I need to maybe just go work for a specific brand that makes outdoor gear, which is certainly a great idea. Right. But you have a lot of tech companies that want to align themselves with outdoor imagery and the idea of sustainability and that type of thing is really in the forefront of a lot of companies' minds. So, there's a lot of opportunities surrounding that.
And how much of your work these days is with outdoor brands versus some of those other mainstream clients?
I'd probably put it at about, let's say 50%.
Okay.
And some of that commercial space, some of it's in the editorial space.
Oh, I lost you.
Oh, no, you there?
Oh, right. You there, yeah. Let me ask that question again. So how much of your work these days is with outdoor brands versus the mainstream clients?
So I would say about 50%. So we've got... and that's split between commercial, editorial, less and less these days, just because of the landscape. It's just changing with print, and a lot of magazines don't tend to have the budgets that they used to. Right. That said, I still love working for editorials because they tend to be some of the most fun projects. Yeah. So, there's a give and take there. But then, you have all of the commercial brands such as, your outdoor gear brands like the Ospreys of the world, Osprey packs of the world, and the Camelbacks of the world, and all of that. But there is now a lot of opportunity with additional brands, tech brands and travel brands. They all want to bring adventure and outdoor imagery into the fold. Right. So,
and so how do clients find you, or do you go after them? Do you target somebody, or they just see your work and come up with an idea for you?
Both, actually. It's I think I might have said spider web before, but it's this industry I've found it's a really big spider web of networking and marketing and things come from a lot of different places. Jobs come from a lot of different places. So whether that's social media, which I spend a lot of time with, and either someone I've had jobs come directly from social media, whether I'm directly pitching somebody through email or phone, or a word of mouth. You're probably pretty familiar with how kind of intimate the outdoor small the industry can be.
Yeah. So it's huge, but it's small at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's once you've been in it for a while,
Right.
Word gets around, and there's recommendations that happen, or someone moves from one company to another, and then all of a sudden they want to bring you along as their photographer. So yeah, it's multifaceted.
Right. And so, do you find that most of your outbound stuff is through social media these days?
That's usually where I'm releasing things first.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
And it depends. If it's a project for a client where there's an embargo, that's one thing. But I shoot a ton of personal work too that then later finds a home with folks.
Right.
Whether that's through a stock agency or just through. I have a lot of just really personal relationships with a lot of companies and brands, so they'll contact me for specific types of imagery, and I've been doing it long enough. I have a pretty deep archive, so I tend to self-assign a lot of work for myself, and just knowing that there'll be value in the market for it later.
Yeah, and you're with Aurora Photos. Any other folks you work with closely like that?
Yeah, Aurora. I've been with them the longest. They were the first ones. Love those guys.
Those guys are great.
For me in my career. I work with Tandem Stills and Motion. Quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I was actually just the keynote speaker at their last conference at Telluride.
Awesome.
That was really fun.
Yeah.
I've done a little work with if we're talking about the stock world, a little work with Offset and a little work with Adobe stock, but nothing. The major archives live with Aurora and Tandem.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah. Aurora, those guys are awesome. Yeah. And so, walk us through a day in the life, if you will. Maybe a typical shoot day, or give the listeners an idea of, okay, you've got the job, and now what do you do? First morning, we're going to go shoot XYZ. You're up at dark 30.
Oh man, well, it depends if it's a shoot day or what's going on. But
that's true. It's a scout day, right? Yeah, right.
The big joke is that I'm really not a photographer. I'm just more of like a professional luggage handler and packer.
Yeah.
Always packing,
well, all of us in the outdoor industry have been a pack mule at one day or another.
But no, on a typical shoot day, my shoot days tend to be pretty long. I'm always, wherever they're typically going to start before sunrise. I do a lot of night photography too. So
you do, yeah. You do great work. Yeah.
So the sleeping happens at alternative times of the day.
A lot of napping, right?
A lot of napping. So like on a typical, like whether it's an editorial commercial shoot, I'd be up at probably 3 a.m. Would probably pack the night before, have everything laid out so I can hop in the truck to get to a trailhead or just you always work backwards from sunrise to wherever you need to be at sunrise. You want to be there, and then you want to be there a little early as well.
Right.
So get there, shoot for the day. I'll usually, whether it's just me or I'm directing a larger project with folks, I always plan a break in the middle of the day. Just that's when the light's not as good and
too harsh. Yeah.
Give folks a break, and then we'll pick it back up in the afternoon through the evening.
Nice.
But that said, if it's a night project, which I've done some of, then I'm starting my day at 5 p.m. And getting there at sunset, and then I'm getting home at 4 or 5 a.m. the following day. So
yeah, those are long days. So a typical, say it's a shoot day, you're up at 3 a.m., you shoot, the morning shoot, and then you take a break, shoot the evening shoot. How late then are you up? Digesting and downloading and sorting through images and charging batteries and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it depends on the deadlines. I have a few clients who are really aggressive with their deadlines, and that can be a challenge. I mean, I've had it to where I've been up for up like a day and a half, 2 days straight, getting things done and off because of a deadline. And I do not prefer to do that, and I definitely push back when possible. But yeah, it's just sometimes that's a reality that you have to make happen. And I might be making emergency phone calls to maybe an additional editor or a friend in the industry that that I'm obviously going to pay, but to help with edits and get that stuff off.
Right. Do you do much uploading files to the clients from the field? Is there any of that goes on with your? I know it goes on in the sports biz all the time. That's how it happens.
It doesn't, and it depends on the client.
Okay.
So Oh, I'm hearing some background noise there.
I'm not hearing that background noise, but every once in a while you fade out a little bit.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, that's very strange. There was just screaming in Spanish.
Really? That's odd.
That's really odd.
There's nobody around me. I live in Swall Meadows, so I'm in the middle of nowhere. So
really fun. We're picking up some extra. I wonder if it'll show up in the recording. If it does, that'll be hilarious. So
I'll leave that in just for the heck of it. I like the raw files. Let everybody hear the reality of the conversation. So.
Oh man. Well, so yeah, the reality is that a lot of the times, no. A lot of the times there is a reasonable deadline. But there are many times, the thing that a lot of folks who don't do this for a living may not realize is you are usually the last phone call. So whether it's through an ad agency, a marketing director, a magazine, they've already worked out a lot of the details of their story, their campaign, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so when you get that call, there's not always a lot of lead time. Mm-hmm. It's usually, I find, if I've got a month's notice for a project, that tends to be a long time.
Wow, yeah, interesting.
And so because of that, the deadlines can be pretty short. They're usually reasonable with, we need it in a week after you're done, 2 weeks after you're done. That's fine. But I've definitely had it where I'm shooting all day into the evening, getting to the hotel, doing an edit, and sending files directly to the client each day, so they then can do a tighter edit and get things published, ASAP.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. So, what opportunities do you see in the biz for young photographers starting out? So let's focus specifically on the outdoor side of things for now, because this is an outdoor biz podcast.
Yep. So, I think the step by step of it for me, folks need to really don't jump the gun. Is my first piece of advice. Is work on your portfolio first. Hone in your imagery. Mm-hmm. Find a niche that you're really excited about, especially within the outdoor industry. It's not even just shoot it all. Do you want to focus on snow sports? Do you want to be in ski, snowboard? Do you want to shoot mountain biking? Do you want to shoot climbing? Right. Because it gets really specific. And if you want to work on the high level of any of those disciplines, you really need to have focused in, because you may get less jobs initially, but it will translate into larger paying, more high volume work in the long term. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something for folks to remember. Mm-hmm. But the thing that is really tough right now is that the landscape is just changing, and that's across all, not just the outdoor business, but all businesses, and of how the kind of content we're making. Well, not necessarily the kind of content, but how much we're making, where it's going, how it's being ingested. Social media, the internet, marketing campaigns have changed drastically. Right. And editorial is a completely different landscape than what it used to be. It takes a much smaller role. So I think it's really important to be aware of what's going on. I don't have the magic bullet for you, honestly.
I don't think there is. We've talked about this a number of times when I was at Lowpro and pursuing my photography business, and I don't think there is a magic bullet. I mean, my experience is you just have to keep grinding and throwing stuff out there, and like you say, try to focus as much as you can, but there is no silver bullet. It just takes, you got to do the work, you got to take the photos,
Got to take the photos, and just continue to pay attention to what's going on around you.
Yeah.
When you look at what the companies are putting out, look mm-hmm. what the editorials are putting out, and look at how they're putting it out, mm-hmm. On what platforms and where they're spending their advertising and marketing dollars and all of that. So yeah, it's just really important to be paying attention.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good advice. And do you have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity or your health if you're out there at all hours of the day? You must get a lot of exercises, I'll bet. I try and be outside as much as possible. There is a lot of office time spent in what I do as well. So, right. But I always try to make sure that I have a balance, mm-hmm. to where
because even when I'm shooting, those are long days outside, I'm definitely still working pretty hard. So I try and make sure that I'm taking time for myself to just go on a hike or go snowboard, go mountain bike, and keep myself in shape for one, but also just to remind myself of why I do what I do in the outdoors, and be a participant sometimes, because if you're always on the other side of the camera, I feel like sometimes you can get burnt out.
Yeah, that's good advice too. Yeah. So you're the guy that turned me on to Audible. Thank you for that. I am a huge fan of Audible. Yeah. So do you have any favorite books, or do you give books as gifts very often?
I wish I had more time to read than I do.
That's the beauty of Audible, though. You just plug it in and go, right? I mean, I have long drives like you do, and it's the best way to pass the time. Podcast or Audible. It's awesome. Yeah,
I do like podcasts. My favorite book that I'm reading, I'm only halfway through it right now, is The Peregrine. Have you ever heard of The Peregrine?
No, I haven't heard of that.
It's an old classic, but it's a lot of people describe it as one of the best. The story goes, it's a guy in England, and he tracks these peregrines over the course of
cool.
And it's just the way it's written. It's just the prose and everything. It's beautiful.
Oh, awesome! We'll put a link to that in the show notes. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's recommended.
You're reading it, or you're listening to it? Sorry.
I'm reading it.
Okay.
Whenever I can pick up a physical book, we spend so much time with screens. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, same.
And I was doing a really great master class. I don't know if people get into master classes, but I watched Werner Herzog, the famous director.
Oh, cool.
Class, and that was one of his recommended readings, and I've really been enjoying it.
Awesome. All right, we'll link to that. Yeah, I'll have to pick that up. That's great. And I'm sure you use a bunch of apps. What are some of your favorite apps, or something that you use on a daily basis?
My two absolute favorites are Sunseeker.
Oh, yeah, it's a great one.
I'm sure people are probably familiar with that. I use that a lot on jobs, just to pre-visualize, because I'll have a scout day typically or two before I go to shoot, and just trying to figure out what I'm doing, where I'm doing it.
Right.
That app for placing the sun, finding out time, the time it's going to crest the ridge, or where it's going to be, is huge. So Sunseeker, and then at night, my absolute favorite one is for stars and Milky Way position, and is Star Walk.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I have both of those. Yeah, no, those are great. We'll link to those too. Those are must-haves for photographers in my book. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been using both of those for years, and they are absolutely wonderful apps.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have a favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100.
My headlamp. Easily.
Yeah. Don't go. You got to have 2 or 3 of those, right?
I do, and I have 5, and I still manage to forget mine in whatever past use.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite headlamp? Which is your favorite headlamp of all the headlamps out there?
I just got a new one. I can't remember the model number specifically, but it's a black diamond.
Okay.
And it's their waterproof, really high lumen version.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just got it actually a couple weeks ago, and
nice.
that thing's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I'll look that up. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to say or ask of our audience as we wrap up here?
I think all I would say is that for folks listening, or especially in the aspiring photographer, director world, I try to make myself fairly accessible to folks. I don't always get right back to people, but if anyone has any additional questions, wants to reach out, feel free to shoot me an email.
Cool.
And or direct message me on social media. I don't always get right back to you, but okay. I promise I do read them, and I will get back at some point.
Great. So, that's awesome. That's very generous of you. We'll put links to that. You're at rachidphoto.com, right? Yep.
So the website's going to be rachidphoto.com. So RACHIDPHOTO.com.
Perfect.
And then my social handles for both Instagram and Facebook are Rachid Photo, and again, that's with the C. So RACHID PHOTO.
Excellent. Well, we'll link to that. Thanks for the time. It's been great catching up. We got to get together and do some outdoor hiking and photographing and tip a beer one of these days. I haven't been to Tahoe, I think, since the last time I saw you and Corey.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, I'd love that. So
yeah.
I know you're well. And I need to get down to Bishop as well.
Yep,
so
come on down.
It's been a little too long for me in the Eastern Sierra.
Yep, awesome. Well, it'll be good to see you.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
All right, thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachid. Take it easy. All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rachid Dahnoun. You can catch up with him on email at rachid@rachidphoto.com, on Facebook, Instagram, and his website, Rachid Photo. That's RACHIDPHOTO. You'll find links to everything we discussed in the show notes at theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/episodes/075. I would be grateful if you visit iTunes to give us a rating and review, and be sure to share this episode or tell a friend about it. This episode is supported by Scott Oshman and the Cairn Company. I had Scott on the show in October. You can listen on episode 044. Thank you, Scott, and thanks for listening. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure and go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you'll find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Thanks for listening, and until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.